Welcome to Association Rockstars, where we hear about the journey and insights of amazing executives and partners who are building the industry of tomorrow. I'm your host, Lowell Aplebaum, the CEO of Vista Cova, where we partner with organizations on facilitation, vision, and strategy. I'm so excited to have with me today Rita Chen Fujisawa. Rita is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the California Association of Health Facilities. She joined CAHF in 2011. CAHF is a statewide organization representing skilled nursing facilities and facilities for the developmentally disabled. As the executive vice president and COO, she oversees the day-to-day administrative activities, operations, and management of the association. Her responsibilities include handling human resources, policy objectives, and facility management. Rita, we're so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
We always like to begin our conversations acknowledging that you're here because of the career that you've had, the path that you've walked, and at least in my household with little ones, we talk about strengths as superpowers. And so I'd love just to open and to hear from you what you feel like one of your superpowers is. What's one of your great strengths?
My great strengths. Well, before I give you that answer,
Yes.
every time I say it's superpower, it makes me think of a superhero,
Ooh,
right? And then I just think of when my daughter was young, there were certain days where I really felt like super mom. It could have been getting her out to school on time, or having a home cooked meal that I made by myself because my husband was out of town, that way. And it's a nice feeling, right?
yeah.
But back to your question, superpower. I want to say perhaps it's being prepared, or this need to always be prepared, which leads me to need to have a plan, right? And so I think in order to have a plan for something, I'm always trying to anticipate, right? Anticipate the future, what's going to come up, or the situation, what's the worst that can happen, and have contingencies in place that way.
Mm,
I think, at work, I have to connect the dots.
right.
So, in order to connect the dots, it's anticipating, but you also have to implement. So, you always need to have a plan in place. Or, I mean, a plan sounds so rigid. Maybe it's a blueprint.
Blueprint. I like I now see you as an architect, if you will, making those blueprints.
Yeah, the blueprints, sometimes in that. I mean, I recently discovered that apparently I need to have a plan for not having a plan.
Can I ask what the moment was you discovered that?
Well, it was we were trying to plan a vacation, and so my daughter was also sitting there, and her friend was over, and my husband and I were talking, and I'm like, I'm trying to ask them all the okay. It was just with my husband and I, but my daughter was offering feedback, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna what are we gonna do after we get to this city? And then she goes, Mom, she goes, do you have to plan every single minute? I'm like, no, I go, I don't, but I need to know so I can figure out what the plan for the day is. She goes, what if
Yes.
you just don't plan anything? Just go with the flow. I go, I can do that, but I need to know, I need to plan for that in my day. Where does it fit? I think
You need to
maybe
schedule unscheduled time.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, just let me know. The plan for the day is to not have a plan and just walk around and get lost in the city, and then I'll be fine.
I love that. Well, I'm going to come back to that. First, I want to start just where you started, which is being a super mom, being a super parent is definitely a superpower. And as a father of three little ones, it's really reward. Like when you do make the home cooked meal and you see them like having good food that you made, there's something really rewarding about that.
It is.
Uh, I'm curious as you think about your own professional journey, uh, this functioning better with a plan, right? Like I liking to have the balance of where you were going and how we're going to get there. Do you feel like that's something that was ingrained in you early on? Or were you always someone who liked to have a plan? Was that something you learned along the way?
I I don't know. It wasn't until probably more recently in this latter part of my life as opposed to when I was younger in terms of wanting needing to have this sense of having a plan. But I suppose I always had it because I remember, when I was younger, and let's say my friends and I, we were planning a barbecue.
Yeah,
I don't, I mean, I felt like it sounded like being a pessimist, but I thought I was just thinking ahead. I'm like, what if it rains? Okay, so let's
that's
plan for
good.
something in case it rains. So I must have had it back then, just this sense of needing to know what the framework, the blueprint, the map, whatever you want to call a plan.
Yeah. I mean, now you're a COO and an executive vice president, so you're really working with the team to create the blueprint for the whole organization,
Mhm.
right? What was your end, like where did you start? Like whether it's within the association world or if it wasn't in the association world, like what was the path that led you to this point?
I think I've had different experiences, and from each one, you know, you build up your portfolio everywhere you go, and every experience that you have, and
Mhm.
sometimes you don't even know that you have it. Um, for me, I would say my quote unquote journey started was moving to California right after college. My friend and I, we packed two suitcases, and we each had a one-way ticket, and we moved to San Francisco. And I'm from the East Coast, so I'm from New Jersey. And so I just remember having to make that decision, thinking, should I not, And I really didn't have a great plan. It was just how to get, the plan was just buying the ticket and getting there and where we
Right.
would stay. And then eventually, you add on to it. But I really feel that that was the biggest decision of my life at the time that led to everything, in terms of my career. I met my husband out here and the life that I have. I feel sad because my family network is all on the East Coast still, but I
Right.
love living out here in California. It was really eye-opening. It was just such a different place.
I'm curious that, not in any way all of them, but so much of the particular association world has a heavy bent towards DC and Chicago. There's a large contingent in California. In your experience, do you feel there's different like cultural elements to our community, different places you are? Have you seen any different pathways there?
In terms of when I first came to California, what was most evident to me was diversity, the diversity of people, right, and cultures, more so than as I was growing up on the East Coast and where I had lived that way.
I'm a
And so
Jersey
that,
boy. I'm a Jersey boy as well, by the way.
oh, whereabouts?
I worked in Great Adventure for 2 summers, Mount Monmouth County.
Okay, great. I'm from Mawa,
Ah,
in northern Bergen County, that way. So I think for me that was the biggest impact, and it was, this is just slightly cultural. Everyone thinks everyone in New York is rude. They're really not. They're just really direct and they're quick and they're concise that
yeah,
way. But I just remember my memory of first coming to San Francisco, just simply asking for directions, where I thought, oh my God, people are so nice because they will stop and they will actually show you, where you need to go on the map. So,
right.
all of that. But in terms of my journey, one of my first jobs that I got, so it's like being a college graduate and really not having that many skills per se. But my first job was with an association, and I didn't even know it until later on.
That's amazing, and I feel like we often hear that. Like I fell into associations. So how'd you fall
Yes,
into
yes.
yours?
So it was the Hong Kong Tourist Association way back when. So, I had that early experience, which led me to working in a hotel. I worked in catering convention services. So everything's tied together because, that work, I had that opportunity to work with associations and helping them plan their meetings, creating the BEOs and the contracts for the room setup and all of that. And right after that, I went to a community-based nonprofit organization that focused on frail elders and provided an alternative to nursing home care that way. And so that was, nonprofit work and allowed me the opportunity to get my master's degree, in the evenings when I went to school that way. But I focused on nonprofit marketing, and I was able to direct those efforts to the nonprofit organization that I was working at, because they were still growing too. They were like mom and pop, and now they've grown to a national model across the country. So that was really exciting. And then I moved to Sacramento, a different city,
Right.
and um, this is probably where my conscious association management journey begins, because then I start working for an association there.
Yeah.
But again, it took a few years to go, oh, this associations, it's a place you can work. It's like a career path.
Yeah.
And here's an opportunity because I feel like I fit. So I
Yeah.
was there for a while and I had a lot of opportunities. That's where I started exploring the CAE, and that even more drew me in,
Yeah.
it and I think that everyone, when they go to do their CAE exam as they prepare for it and you're in a study group, I think there's a week of denial because we're all like doing the test questions
Right.
and we're going, wait. My organization doesn't, this is how we do it.
Right.
Then someone said, yes, but no, we do it this way. And then it's always going back to no. We know organizations will approach it differently, but here we're looking at what's the best practice,
Yep.
right? And it's putting that, and I loved it. I loved that process. Though I don't want to take that exam again.
It's allowed not to, but I'll say in my own CAE journey, I agree with you. The learning how to learn for it, right? That it wasn't just about right and wrong, but there's many rights, but like what potentially is the best out of the
Right.
goods. It gives a very different lens to like picking paths and trying to decide what to pursue.
Exactly. As to, I mean, it gives you the framework, right?
Yeah.
To really make your decisions about what you need to do. And then that led me to the organization that I am at now, the California Association of Health Facilities. And it's
For
been a
13
wonderful
years.
journey. What was
Yeah.
that?
For
Oh, I
13
know.
years.
I know. I was like,
Great.
oh my God. It went so fast.
Yeah.
And part of that journey, I mentioned the CAE, but a big component, I have to say, was being a part of DELF
Mm.
and ASAE, and getting involved and having really more the opportunity to meet other association professionals,
You know,
getting to know other people.
I was going to ask if you can tell us a story or two of a meaning leadership moment in your journey to being a COO. I mean, clearly you're a leader in your organization. I don't know if DELP is one of those you want to tell us about, but certainly as you've grown in your career, I'd love to hear a story or two of moments when you took a step forward as a leader or you grew as a leader, right? To certainly the position you're in now, but the community you've also built.
Within within DELF or within the
Where
organization?
your choice, as you think about like your own leadership journey, what has been a moment along the way, right? That you've gone from the role of someone doing the work or contributing to actually leading others, right? Or leading, whether it's in a volunteer capacity, whether it's in work, uh, any of those moments would be great to hear
Sure,
about.
I think it's I used to think of leadership or being a leader as a word, right? Or a stereotype. You had to be a certain type of person. You had to have certain qualities in order to be a leader. And so even we as leaders now need to remember to tap the emerging, potentially capable, the next generation of leaders, to let them know that they have that capability and potential. And I think it was one of the executive directors I had worked at. And she was always the one that was going, you can do this, or she would offer me these opportunities. And
Mhm.
one of them was the one where I had this opportunity to be appointed to the Dental Hygiene Board of California. while I was working at that other association. And so that is I would represent the public. It's a department, it is a board under the Department of Consumer Affairs here, but it's a regulating agency and one of enforcement for dental hygienists in California. And it was the first of its kind in our state and across the country, right? And so that was exciting. So, at one point she gave me the opportunity. She's like, would you be interested? And, it's kind of scary. And I'm like, sure, so I
Yeah.
figured I'd apply. And then, sometimes that's my solution for not dealing with something fully. I'm like, sure, I'll take the first. It's all baby steps, right? I'll take the first step, and then, the application goes away because it's in someone else's court. And then you get on to the next step. You get the call, and then you get the interview, and then it's like, oh my gosh,
Here
I
you
was
are.
appointed to the board. Yeah. And it was a governor office appointment. So I was proud of that, and it did lead back to the fact that, oh, I can develop more skills in terms of being a leader. But here I am in this role where you do need to lead and you need to think, and plan for that.
Yeah. Do you find the experience you had serving on that board as a public member, does any of that infuse your daily, I mean, the work you do as an executive vice president or as a COO? Like, did the volunteer experience inform how you function as a professional at all?
It gave me insights. So it added to I think being sometimes for me, I like to observe, I like to see how things go. And you're like, oh, and you take bits and pieces of all of that you incorporate that. I tend to do it more subconsciously and not realizing it with it. But for me, it's listening. It always comes back to some basic points, right? It's communication and it's listening carefully. But to me, it's also context, the
Mm,
context of everything. Because being on that board, I mean, so when you work in an association, you're representing an industry or profession. Being on
sure.
that board, right, it is focused on a profession. But as a public member, my role was also to protect the public, to
Mm,
make sure that whatever, so you're a regulator in a way. So that was it was a different lens to put
yeah,
on. You have to remember, who you're representing and what the work it is that you're doing.
I love that. I, you're identifying some really powerful pieces that you learned, you experienced even as you led.
Mhm.
Where, like, as you think about the years ahead, what else do you want to learn about? Like, what is interesting you today where you want to keep learning about, or subject you want to start learning about?
The world is so big. To
I
me,
know.
there's just so many things to learn, right? I'm even developing a list for like retirement in terms of all the things that I want to spend time on because I can't now.
What's one or two of the like? I'm going to pause 1 second. What's one or two of the things on the list?
Um, well, okay, I had to cross this one off, but this was on since my 20s because I got involved, okay, don't laugh. I got involved in quilting with this group at one of my organizations. We get together to quilt. And so you think it's something you do like really later on, but I thought, oh, that's so cool. So I had this whole bin of materials that I've been saving because I was just too busy, at that point with a baby and then working. And when would I have, and I was hand sewing it. I mean, I didn't use a
Wow.
machine or anything. Um, then I said, what, I can't, I don't have time, but I would love to do this when I retire.
I love that. Okay, so quilting's on quilting will be in the plan.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, my things are like, it's simple, playing the piano, having time to really focus and play the piano. Um, I have a ton of stamping and art supplies because
Mm,
I'm quote unquote a card maker. So I really want to make more than one card per weekend.
these are good goals. I like this. I like
And it's travel. It's travel. So these are all simple. It's just that it's time related. that way, definitely travel and spending more time with my husband because we're like ships passing the night sometimes, which makes it exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, and but yeah, to have time to spend together.
I'm uh, tempted to ask so many of the leaders that I talk to and work with talk about time, especially right now in the mid 2020s, is something that is perhaps the most precious commodity we have. Everyone feels strapped for time, not enough time. You're part of the role of a COO and executive vice president often is about how sort of managing the time of the organization, all the stuff getting done. I think the question is just sort of general, which is how do you, in this day and age, in this moment, any philosophy or approach to time? Like, how do you help others with it? How do you approach handling time in your life? It just seems to be a challenge many people are going through.
I don't know that I have the answer for that, because even more recently, I'm like, how can we be even more busy than we were 5 years ago, right? I know that there's more issues, right? And we kept thinking that coming out of the pandemic, every year that we had come back to the office, I kept thinking, "Mm, it'll get better. It'll get
Oh,
better." It's gotten more whatever norm is now, the new norm. However, it is even more busier, and I can't pinpoint what it is unless it's technology or that people require a faster response,
mm,
or really is it the issues? When you ask um, how I how I try to do it, again,
yeah,
for me, it's a plan. I figure
yeah,
out I figure out what all the projects are. I think about the big picture, where does the organization need to be? What are the things we need to do? So I have a process, I'm process oriented that way. So I have the blueprint.
yeah,
And what I like to do is to help people find their process as well, if I'm able to.
yeah,
But it is always that anticipation. I say anticipation, and that for me means, what's going to come up in the future? What do I need to be worried about now? So we'll be prepared um, down the line in 6 months. And even though we might not know what it is.
yeah. Well, I know time's starting to run short, but it makes me want to ask for those who are looking to grow to be stronger leaders to the
Mhm.
future, right? That they're going to be the ones to eventually take over or step up. Uh, what advice would you give them about what they should be focusing on today to be the leader that we need tomorrow? What advice would you give to those coming up?
to, to have the ability to sit and reflect on what's happening around them. Because I always believe in context, right? But we get so caught up in our day to day tasks that we need to get done because that's the easiest thing to do. What can I get off my plate today, like this moment, so I can check it off and get on to the next thing. Sometimes it doesn't leave us enough time to really sit and think, but when you're able to sit back, I call it telescoping. Like, you have a
Mm,
microscope, you look in, you telescope out, to really telescope out so that you can connect the dots,
yeah,
because everything is interrelated. When we all work we have a fantastic team here, of policy directors that focus, and they are so amazing to work with because they are the brains of the organization. And each department is working on their own things. So there needs to be interconnectedness because everything is connected in terms of what we do. And sometimes they just need to remember that coming together when we share things, that's
yeah,
when I get glimmers of, oh, you know what? Those things go together. It's not evident to everyone and might not matter to them, but it'll give me a good conversation with my CEO to say, hey, what do you think about this? It looks like there might be a trend. Should we be worried about XYZ in the future? Or this is what I see. I think this is what we need to do.
the I love the idea, the frame that what we really need are those who can curate patterns, right? Like connect. The
Mhm.
idea, as you framed it, is connecting the dots, telescoping out to see that. as you think about not just reacting to the present with the plan, but as you said, like prognosticating the future a little bit, so you're headed the right way. That's a nice circle back to where you started in terms of forming your plans and trying to think about where you go, even if it's planning to have unplanned time.
I'm gonna
Uh,
have to work on that
well, it
one.
sounds like your daughter's willing to help you, so that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll I know we went a little long, but I want to ask just one last question, which is, before you dive full into quilting once again, when you get to that point far in the future, as you think about the professional journey that you've had, what's the legacy you hope you leave behind? What's the impact you hope that your time and the association world or at your organization, right? What's the impact that you hope that it
In terms of legacy, regardless if it's personal or for the association community, for me, it's always about if I could have helped one person, right? Or, individuals that I've met throughout my life, that's what I hope to do. Was there something that I could have contributed of myself? Is there something that they could have learned from me? And I
is?
think it's about being a role model. That way, I hope that I am a good role model. And, as people remember me in the future, that there was something that I could have taught them or something that they learned from me, because I know that I learn from everyone. I love learning like little nuggets here and there, right?
Yeah.
Um, The other is, when I think of my daughter, really, I only have one daughter. And for her, because she's an only child, it's important to me that she be independent and self-sufficient.
Hmm.
So for her, I would love to have a world that where she can feel strong as a woman, be independent and be self-sufficient that way. um, and find role models of her own so
Yeah.
that she can aspire to.
Well, you've definitely given all of us some nuggets today, and from everything you've told us about how you function, how you think, what you bring to the table, I have a feeling she has a good role model to start with,
Yeah,
uh, at least
thank you.
it's in her mom. Thank you, Rita, for spending time with us and sharing your journey, your perspectives with us. I really appreciate you making the time.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you to Amy Hager, who's been there with everyone online, chatting on the side. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in, as together we get to be inspired and to learn from those who are inspiring and leading in our nonprofit and association world. We look forward to you joining us again next time. And until then, Association Rock On.